Hey y'all. Was having conversations about cookies and sessions, and I decided to do some experimentation to try to clarify some things for myself, and I thought I would share that with you. So let's get started. Okay. Um, so I've got a old phase 3 project. I don't know how old this is, a few months. I use this actually as our one of our review repos for the Rails review sessions. And I just want to talk a little bit about authorization and cookies and sessions. Before we jump into deeper into cookies and sessions, let's just sort of acknowledge some of the authorization features that are happening. I'm mostly going to use Postman here. So if we make a GET request to invoices, we get a message that says not authorized. And, for I would say 90% of the actions that you have in your backend server, your API server, you should have authorization protection. That's one of the requirements. And how is that happening? Well, typically I would expect to see something in the application controller that is extending that protection before action to all of the other controllers. And then that takes me to a method, and then the method runs and it looks at the session, and the session needs to include this particular key. If it doesn't include that key, that means nobody's logged in. So that's kind of the easy thing. And you can go back to labs and copy and paste, put stuff in. I mean, one of the challenges of learning in the boot camp model is the balance between just taking code that works from one place and putting it in another, and then really trying to own it, understand it, make sense of it. So this is an effort to help you make sense of stuff. And of course, sessions is enabled through several little lines of code that are added. This include line, and then also I think there's some stuff in the, put myself on the spot here. The config, nope, environment development, maybe some kind of middleware configuration. Awesome. I don't remember where it is. It might be in here. Anyways, so all of that enables sessions to happen. And we're going to dig a little more into what the heck is a session, what's a cookie, where do they live. But so in the terminal here, you can see we started get invoices and went to the invoices controller, bada boom, bada bing. And I accidentally sent some parameters that I shouldn't have included here. Body none. So if I send this request again, make this a little more clean. Yep. Get invoices controller, and we got a 401 because of the authorized method. So let's go ahead and log in with Postman. So first of all, let's point out that over here let's get this cleared out. There's no cookies. I just cleared out all the cookies. And I'm going to send a post request to login. And I do need to send some information in the body. And this is one of the, these are good credentials. And so if we follow through with this process, we're going to go to the sessions controller, and we're going to end up in the create, and we've got a before action authorize exception. That's good because otherwise we would never get here. So for instance, if I took this out and I tried to log in, I would get not authorized, which is not this message. It's coming from, again, halted the chain here, authorize, you got the 401, because we forgot to accept this particular action. So I said 90% of the actions are protected. This action is not protected because it doesn't make any sense. I'm trying to log in. You're not checking to see that I logged in before I log in. So let me put that back. I don't actually think we need the destroy method, because if we're logging out, we are logged in. So I'm going to go ahead and just stick a bybug here. Well, actually, I'm going to stick it here, and I'm going to stick one here so we can see what's happening. So now I'm going to send this request again, and this time, one of the nice things I like about Postman is you see sending request. It's just looping through it. We're on hold here. Why are we on hold? Because we hit the bybug in the back end. We are on, it's pointing to line 8, but that means we hit the bybug on line 7. This means that if I look at session right now, it says not yet loaded. One of the things I was doing to kind of explore this, and this is a good piece of advice for you phase 4, phase 5 students, take time and look at documentation. So for instance, in this, I saw this is an action dispatch request session object. Remember, this is just a memory address. So this is a module that I was trying to look at to say, okay, well, tell me more about this particular class. And basically, there's some various instance method here. So for instance, to hash keys loaded, I can do session dot keys. There are no keys, session dot loaded. It's already telling me here, this is not loaded yet. Session dot to hash turns, an empty hash because essentially there's nothing in that session object. So we think of the session as an object. It has really no keys right now, but what's about to happen, it is available to me. And the reason it's available is because of that middleware stuff that we put in there. And I'm about to log in I've already been credential authenticated, right? Using this find by and the authenticate method. And now I'm about to log in. So when I press C, it's going to unpause. That means I'm going to run line 8 and go to line 9. Here I am. And again, the arrow is pointing at 10. That means I stopped at 9. So I can now look at the session and I get a different result. So there's a bunch of stuff happening here, but at the end of it, I can see there's a key, user ID, and a value 1. So if I do session.keys now, it actually has the session ID and the user ID. And let's just, for fun, let's look at the session ID. I don't think I've ever done that before. Oh yeah, big string, probably unique to each session. It'd be interesting if I come back. Maybe let's save this somewhere. Let me put it in my application controller here. Boom. I want to comment it out. I just want to save it so we can look at it later. Okay, so we're logged in, right? Well, this is what logging in means. It means putting information in the session. Okay, so I'm going to do C here, and I'm going to release my bybug. Completed 200 OK, and you can see from the application, the sessions controller, what I rendered back was a user. So if I go back to Postman, I expect to see the user object connected to the user's credentials that I logged in with. And of course, that you're sending back to your client. We're just playing in Postman, but if we were actually using your app, it goes back to your client. Maybe you're loading it up in your current user state. Here we go. Yep, there it is. And keep in mind, just bonus point here, that the way that user object looks has to do with your serializer. And this current serializer, this was here, I was playing around with this, but it should really be sending back all the invoices for the user. So I think I could potentially log in again, just to kind of silly. I don't want to log in because I'm going to destroy the session potentially. Let's switch it up to the me route. Get me, that should be the user show route. Yeah, okay. So there is more information there, right? And that's part of, the state management serialization. We've done videos on that. Okay. Now, take a look over here. Now there is a cookie. So I was kind of interested in this whole cookie thing, and where do cookies come from, where they originate, where do they live. So that cookie did not exist when we sent the login request. I don't know if you remember that. Go back. Let's do it again. Delete. This is our log out. Well, hold on to that thought. I do want to send a request here to like invoices. So now when I send this request, I can access anything I want at this point because I'm logged in. Don't need that information going around. I'm just was wanting to show you something that was protected. Right. So invoices is an example of a protected route. I would not be able to get here unless I was able to pass through the authorized method. We can prove that we're passing through the authorized method by putting the bybug in here. So now when I send this request in Postman again, spinning, yep, I hit the bybug. Here I am. And now I'm curious. Now, one of the things that's interesting to me is that it says the session is not yet loaded, and yet the session user ID is there. Let's check. Session user ID. Bam. And that is the thing that we're asking here, right? We're essentially saying in the authorized method, does the session object include the user ID? Oh, let's look at our documentation. Include. Now, this is interesting because it doesn't appear to be a method, but this has to do with the similarity to the hash, because I think the hash, Ruby hash class, does have an include method. There it is. So it's this interesting kind of overlap between the session as a hash, the session as a action dispatch request session class instance of a, so anyways, I can't explain that. Can't explain, how it can be two different things at once. Anyhow, so the session includes the user ID. That's the thing that's going to pass us through. So we're going to skip this not authorized, and we're going to get to our method. Now, just out of curiosity, does the session have, it's not yet loaded, so does have a session ID. Let's look at that session ID. I'm very curious. Is it the same as the one from before? Don't. Dot notation, no good. Bracket notation. Look at this. Look at this. Okay, so this little piece of information is being passed around. And it matches. Right. Interesting. So let us move forward. I'm going to take out the bybug here. We'll do some logging out. Oh, before we move on from the bybug, I can save this. Pause this for a second. Okay, we're back. Before we move on, I just wanted to dig into cookies. So when I type cookies, it gives me the action dispatch cookies cookie jar. So I went to some more documentation, which was here, action controller cookies. And it gave me an example of how to set a cookie that expires in an hour. So I just copied this code and I pasted it in here. And now when I type cookies again, somewhere I should be able to see this information. Very hard to see. Here we go. Here we go. So let me just open this up a little bit more. And for some reason, so for instance, so I see at cookies here. This is an attribute of this class. Remember instance variables and objects. So I can see that we've got a session ID and we've got login. Now back to Postman, cookies, session ID. Okay. And now I'm going to go ahead and release this. So we sent some information back. Remember we were doing an invoices, get request to invoices. That's the index. So we should see in Postman a bunch of stuff here. And when I go here, oh, look at this new cookie login. That login cookie came from me doing that in the browser. This Postman is a client, essentially. It's making requests to my API server. We're communicating with it. I kind of think about it as from the side, because you are building your web application to have your client and your backend, and then they communicate with each other. And when you build it, you kind of only think about the client interacting with the API server. But remember, the point of an API server is potentially it can be interacted with from other actors. So that's why I kind of think about the Postman as a side interaction, because we're coming straight in to the backend server. All right, I'm going to I can't really see anything about these cookies. Oh, no, I can. Look at that. There's a session ID. And I think this guy, this crazy string, definitely does not match that thing that we saw in the session. The session bracket session ID. But it did potentially match the thing we saw in the cookies. The login you can see here, got that. We got the expires. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to add a cookie just for fun. And I just want to save that. And then I'm going to take off expires. Okay. And now I'm going to send this request again. What will I send a request to? Is there a show route somewhere that I can request? Invoices controller. Let's just make show route real quick. Def show invoice equals invoice find params ID. Okay. And here we go. So let's make sure my route actually exists. Well, let's just send the request and see what happens. Get invoices /2. We got nothing. The route exists, but because I said resources invoices, bam, the route exists, but what did I forget to do? Let me get my file structure. There we go. Invoices controller. I forgot to actually render anything back. So render invoice back. Here we go. So now I'll send it again. Bam, there's the invoice. Remember, we're passing through the invoice serializer. Okay, so and I get started invoices 2. This actually happened twice. Completed 204, no content. Completed 200, okay. So both, okay responses. Now, let's go and put the buy bug here. Send it a third time, and I want to look at that session, and I want to look at the cookies and just see if I can tell any changes that have been made. First of all, still have 3 cookies here. Yep, cookie 2, session ID login. Be kind of fun to add a cookie that actually expires in like 5 seconds. Add a cookie, let's see, September. So I don't know if it's going to be this easy, but Fry, September 15. Oh, that's 2023. And let's just move this up to 1 minute later. So I think that was basically like a year out. Oh, might have already disappeared. Okay, Fry, 15th of September, 2023, 17:38:52 GMT. The heck is the time right now? Time in GMT, 17:38, right? So maybe 17:40. Hey, all right. Okay, we got a couple minutes before this cookie expires. All right, so we're going to send this request again. Bam, this time, whoop, we hit the buy bug. Here we go. All right, session, yep, session.keys. There they are, and I don't even need to go in there. I can see session ID is right there. User ID 1, cool. I mean, there's other stuff happening here. I can see all these different attributes. I don't know enough about this to talk, about what's happening, but you can see some of the stuff there. The session lives in Rails, in the server, in the backend. So when, for instance, we disconnect and we send information to the back end. Ooh, we should experiment with this. It shouldn't have anything to do with the request coming in, or does it? I gotta answer that question because I don't know the answer to it. Okay, here we go. Cookies, cookies. I don't think it's gonna let me do that. No. Cookies bracket login. Was that a thing? Ew, cookies bracket cookie 4. No, what was it? Gone. Dang. That was fast. Okay. Cookie 4 is there from the perspective of this request because it was made before that cookie expired. Cookie 2. Because remember, we just said equals value. So that's where that string value is coming from. Cool. And then the most important cookie, session ID. Oh, look at that. Okay. So all of those cookies we can tell, those are the ones that are being held in Postman and they're sent with the request. Cool. See, boom. All right. So what I wanted to explore now was, let's go to the front end. Sorry, let's go to the browser. This is essentially a different client, right? So Postman and the browser are both on the same computer, but they're requesting information kind of from different routes. So I just want to see, well, first of all, if I say invoices, not authorized. Correct, I'm not authorized. If I say clients, that's an unprotected route, but I want to get a buy bug because I want to kind of see something. So let's move this here. This is unprotected. And let us now make this invoices request. Wait a minute. I'm being dumb. This is protected. The client's controller before action authorized is unprotected. So I can now put my buy bug here and I should hit it. No, browser. Go to clients again. Bam. Now, just to point out, this is much more subtle in the browser. The spinning wheel here, that means the request is still pending. Over here, bam, here I am. Session, not yet loaded. Okay, session bracket user ID doesn't exist because that is something that would get sent in the cookie. Oh boy, yeah. See, this is still sort of murky. So it doesn't totally. The session doesn't totally live in the back end. It's something that's being dispatched back and forth, and carrying information about who's logged in. So from the browser's perspective, nobody's logged in. From Postman's perspective, I am logged in because I'm carrying that cookie back and forth. Okay. I think that's about all I have to offer you at this point. I think it's important to remember that there is any little topic that you take, there's a whole class of code that's behind it. There's a whole like levels of understanding in terms of, this assessment and what you need to be able to do. You need to be able to explain how a person logs in. You need to be able to explain how the backend is protecting the actions that need to be protected. I guess the last thing I'll show you is this sort of side protection, which this particular student handled in a very specific way, but there's some easy kind of collection methods that you can use to do that instead. So that's the kind of thing you need to be able to explain. You don't need to be able to explain the whole theories of cookies and sessions. I wanted to just kind of dig into it to show you a little bit more. So we're going to switch back to Postman. In Postman, I can close this up. in Postman, I am still logged in, and I am going to make a, well, first of all, let me go to the me route. So I got a bunch of IDs, 20, 21, 22, 26, 30. I want to do invoices 25. My user ID is 1. I'm fake user 1. And this particular invoice was written by user ID 8. I don't know who that is, but it's not my invoice. So basic levels of protection are such that if we make a request, let's just make a simple delete request to invoices 25, we should not be able to do this because this is not our invoice to delete. And again, from the perspective of the client side, you probably, the browser, you probably built this in because you don't allow the person to have access to the buttons that would allow them then to delete the thing that they were saying, I want to delete this. Like they don't even see those invoices. So that it's one of those things that as a programmer, it's easy for it to not really cross your radar. But again, thinking about the side requests that are not coming through your React client, but from Postman, other browsers, other people who know how to access your API. This is why we do it. And basically, if we think about how this is functioning, we can find this invoices controller. There is a special method that this programmer wrote called authorize user, and basically authorize user gets the user ID, gets the particular invoice from the params. So that would be number 25. Let's just put a bybug here and see what's happening. So we send this request again, we're hitting the bybug. That means we got into here. And if we look at user ID, that should be the number 1. But if we look at the @invoice, that has user ID of 8. Those two things don't match. This is not allowed. And that's where we're getting this error message from. Again, this would never come up in the client. If you've designed your app properly, we don't get the option to think we could delete something that's not ours. Maybe that's conditional rendering on your edit and delete buttons. That's a pretty common way to do it. I'll just say that this method of doing it is, there's an easier way, which where we could, so where's my delete? Here we go, @invoice.destroy. So we could have started with, and this came up in the third phase, but basically, if I grab the user, here we go. Well, they're doing it right here, user.invoices. This is the kind of the recommended approach. So then we start with the user, and then we say user.invoices.find and put in the params ID. And then we try to destroy that. And the important thing here is that remember, find will raise an exception if it's not there. So I'm not sure if find will work on this collection, but we'll find out. And then that should direct us to the rescue, which if it's in the application controller, record not found, then we would get the not found response. So let's see if the error changes or if this whole thing breaks, what happens? Oh, we got to release this. So we go to bybug C, that's going to give us the unauthorized. Yep, you're not authorized to edit or delete. All right, now we're going to send the request again. We've changed the code. So in the invoices controller, in the delete, in the destroy here, we're going to find the user, we're going to get the invoice, and then we're going to try to destroy it. And the only thing we're hoping is going to intercept it is the find method. Let's find out what happens. Oh, because I still have this. Now I'm going to disable this protection, and I'm going to send it again. Woohoo! Not found. Now, maybe you want the other message, so you create this, custom protection route. This is another way to handle it. You just use the find method, but off the collection instead of off of the capital I invoice, right? So instead of doing this, we're looking at it from user.invoices. And then if it's not one of my invoices, I can't find it. So I don't know what you're talking about. So maybe a friendlier way to handle the hacker coming in from the side. All right. That ended up being a lot of information. I hope that was helpful. There's so much to know, try not to be overwhelmed by it. I think it's best if you always come from a place of curiosity and like, how does this work? And what more can I add to what I understand? That's the best approach. All right. See ya.